On today's show, the Cavs are not better without Darius Garland. Yes, it's been said, but it's not true. And we're going to tell you why. Spencer German with me on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. Joined today by Spencer German of Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, and maybe you know him from the Locked On Browns podcast, which is, where I think the higher ups are thinking about changing the name to Locked On Shedeur Sanders. But we've got a ton of Cavs stuff to get to. But first, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today, every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Spencer, there's been a talking point since I don't remember if it was the exit interviews that the Miami Heat had or interviews they had following the 55-point, it is funny every time I say it, 55-point Game 4 loss that they had to the Cavs, where Kyle Anderson basically said, Darius Garland left and the Cavs got better. And I think that has been twisted a lot of different ways as to the Cavs. Some people saying that the Cavs are a better team without Darius Garland, which I think could not be further from the truth. And I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's podcast with John Fanta, but I think it's worth giving a little bit more air to, like dispelling this, because it's not something that is true. And I think the best way I can put it, and I'm curious your thoughts here, and we'll just kind of go from this thought. The Cavs are not better without Darius Garland. They are different when Darius Garland is off the floor. It doesn't mean they're better as a team. It means they play a different style. That is just that. It's different.
Yeah, and I think so first of all, I think Kyle Anderson's saying this too. Like, we know words were exchanged in that series.
Darius Garland in particular.
Yes, and then I thought it was going to kind of backfire on him when he didn't play in Game 3. Like, oh, here we go. Tyler Hero's going to go off for like 40, and the Heat are going to win, and it's going to be without Darius Garland on the floor, and everyone's going to start ripping on him. But his teammates sort of rallied around him and blew them out in those two games, and so it didn't really ever matter. But that is kind of what I think that talking point started sort of in an ancillary way when he was out, and they were blowing out the Heat. And then it only picked up steam when Kyle Anderson talked about it. But it did kind of feel like from the Heat side, like a parting shot at the guy who I guess started the trash talk between the two teams in the first place, even inadvertently. Because I know, our friend Spencer Davies was the one who asked the question to Darius that sparked that, and it wasn't even anything about Tyler Hero, which is kind of funny. But regardless,
like the question that started this was because I was standing right next to Spencer when he asked it, and it was an incredibly innocent question.
Yeah, it was about like protecting the basketball.
Right. If you know Spencer, like, he's not the type of journalist in that locker room to go there and try and get these gotcha quotes or try and start something. Like, if anything, his questions tend to lean like very inside basketball type. Yeah. Like, he really trying to boil down on the actual things happening on the floor. And he asked, what is the key to, Miami, since the trade deadline, has forced a lot of turnovers. They've done a really good job of doing this. What's the key to playing a clean game, not turning the ball over a lot? Because in the first two games, the Cavs did a great job protecting the basketball. And then Darius Garland just goes, we just want to pick on Tyler Hero. Like, he didn't say those exact words, but that was the message.
Right. Honestly, the fact that it was Spencer who asked the question is what makes it even better, because he isn't that gotcha guy. And so I've been giving him so much crap about that since we worked together, obviously, with Cavs on SI, because of all the people to sort of stir the pot in the playoffs, it had to be him. Like, I was like, hey, you this is like this is the antithesis of you. And somehow you're the one who sparked it. So it's been kind of funny. But yeah, like, it kind of felt like a parting shot from the Heat since he wasn't out there, of being like, well, hey, they're better without him anyway. And I think that's kind of where I sort of viewed it from the beginning. but it has evolved, I think, over the last couple of days into a legitimate conversation that Cavs fans are having. And I hate that this happens every year. Like the second, and this is why, like, I've had conversations elsewhere about who had the most to prove in the postseason. And there's good answers. Like Donovan's a good answer because he's never made it to the third round of the playoffs, and he views himself and is considered one of the best players in this league. How does he get into that next echelon or that next tier, right? He's got to go further in the playoffs. I think Evan Mobley's a great answer. He's been trying to prove things since he came in this league, live up to that billing of being a unicorn. He took a massive leap this year, but is he going to do it in the playoffs? But my answer was Darius Garland, because every time something goes wrong for this team, it's always Darius. He's always the weak link because he plays a similar position to Donovan, and there's always questions about can they coexist. And so this just added fuel to that fire for people when you saw them blow out the Heat the way they did without him on the floor. And it was easy, the low-hanging fruit, to just be like, well, clearly it's a Darius problem. They're better off without him. And I just want to remind people, like, small sample size, there have not been a lot of games where you only had Ty Jerome and Donovan Mitchell and you didn't have Darius Garland out there alongside Donovan Mitchell. But even in the games that they, like, when those two are on the floor together, which is the majority of games, they've been brilliant. Like, they've been so good. And I get the defensive end is a problem for Darius. He gets picked on the same way they were picking on Tyler Hero. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, he gives a lot of effort on defense. You can tell, especially this postseason, that he is trying because he knows that he's going to be the one who gets caught up in a lot of the pick and roll actions and different things that they're trying to do. And so he's really trying hard to, up that level of his game. As a smaller guard, there's only so much he can do. But, like, I think before we start trading off pieces and before we start saying, like, he can't play here, they got to move on from him, they're better off without him, this team sort of deserves a chance to prove in the playoffs that they can do it with Darius, because look what they've done to this point with Kenny Atkinson. Like, we all thought coming into this year that maybe it couldn't work, and he got 64 wins out of it, and they're on to the second round of the playoffs after sweeping their first round opponent. Like, let's give it some time here before we just start, like, jumping back to the old narratives of, well, Darius just can't fit here.
Right. And I also think the other thing too that, is worth bringing up in this, I thought Darius Garland was pretty good in the 2 games that he played, right? Like, that is part of this too. And because it's not as if he didn't play in the entire series against the Heat. He played in 2 games, the first 2 games. He shot 51% from the floor, 40% from the field, 90% from the free throw line. And yes, 2 games, small sample size stuff, but game 1, he does not get the credit he deserved for what he did in game 1 because Ty Jerome came out of nowhere off the bench and had 28 points. But Darius Garland had 27 points in that game. He was really, really good. Game 2, I thought he was really good again. Like, this is a team that I look at and say, can they win a championship without Darius Garland in their current form? No. They need Darius Garland to not only just be on the floor, they need Darius Garland to be an all-star, all-NBA caliber player, which he has shown, I think, throughout this year and throughout 3 years ago, that he's capable of doing that. He has to show that he's capable of doing in the playoffs. And I thought he had a nice start in the first 2 games prior to his toe injury. But I also think that it's such a lazy thing to say, oh, they did this stuff without Darius Garland, so they're better. Like, how do we know that they would have looked any different defensively? Because they went to a different defensive strategy in game 3 where they wanted to isolate Tyler Hero and top lock him and take him out of the game essentially and play 4-on-4. Could they have done that with Darius Garland on the floor? I don't see why not. Like, is he any less than Ty Jerome on that end of the floor? Not really. Ty's a little bit longer, but Darius is certainly, I think, a quicker player. The one thing that I come away from this with is the Cavs look different without him. And they look different without him in this specific way. They spend less time with 2 ball dominant guards on the floor when somebody is out from that trio, from the Donovan, Darius, Ty Jerome trio. So when Darius is out, what did we see? We saw lineups that were Donovan Mitchell with Evan Mobley in 3 wings. And shockingly, those lineups were great because, of course, they are, because the Cavs have a lot of really good players at all of those spots. So that worked really well. Could that have worked with Darius on the floor instead of Donovan and maybe Jarrett instead of Evan? Would it work quite as well? I don't know, but I think the chances of that being successful are pretty good. So what I come away from this, Spencer, is, okay, maybe there needs to be less time. And I don't think that they needed to do this against Miami. I don't think they need to do this against Indy. I don't know if they need to do this at all, but should there be less time having two guards on the floor? Like instead of, Darius Garland, maybe it means less Ty Jerome.
I think that, listen, I think your approach to this subject is great, especially looking at it from a standpoint of, like you did in thinking through whether or not they're better without him and why they need him. And that's been my stance all along is, when he was struggling at the end of the season to make shots, it was like, he's got to get this going in the postseason because they need his scoring so badly on this team. And he got it turned around just in time. And then those first two games, like you said, he played very well. And I like that you bring up the different lineups because I do think those are the types of things that Kenny Atkinson is kind of keeping up his sleeve for a potential series with Boston. There's still that mystery lineup that we haven't seen yet this year. I think it's Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, and Dean Wade all on the floor together. I don't think he's run that out there once this year. And so like with I think the other two would be Donovan and then Mobley. So like he saves some things. And yeah, there are instances where I think in a series like that, you might have to split them up more and have Darius out there for stretches with more wings and have Donovan out there for stretches with more wings because that's how the Celtics are built. But you're not going to give all those things away right now. And I think until somebody sort of until somebody throws a punch at you that goes against what's worked to this point, you don't have to change anything. Like the Cavs have gotten to the point where they won 64 games. They're the top seed in the East. They haven't lost a game in the playoffs yet because this has worked the way that they've currently done things. They deserve, I think, the benefit of the doubt to keep trying and doing what they're doing until proven otherwise. And so, yeah, if Indiana comes out and like really exploits that lineup, if Darius does play, we know he's obviously questionable going into that game, then yeah, maybe you throw a different look out there. But as things stand right now, like it seems pretty obvious to me that they need Darius, especially on the offensive end of the floor, to be a contributor. And that's part of the reason why they are as good as they are. Like he's another scoring threat for you. And I can't imagine where they'd be without him, honestly, even though I respect the hell out of Ty Jerome and I think he's a great player. I also think like the role he's had, he has really embraced and done a nice job in, and things could be different if he was a starter. You never know. There's more sort of tape out there on him too if he was a starter. So it's some different, elements to it, but I definitely, like you, push back on the notion that this team is better without Darius and that they should prioritize Ty Jerome and maybe ship him off this offseason because it's not going to work. Like, let's give them some time here to see how this playoff run goes before we start trading off players again.
It's such a hot take thing, and it just feels like the take of somebody who didn't watch. And I'm not saying that everybody that listens to this podcast or watches on YouTube needs to watch all 82 games. That's for me and you to do.
Yeah.
And I, love if you do that. But I think that if you are just kind of parachuting into the Cavs and you are only watching them in the playoffs, I think you kind of missed what Darius Garland has meant to this team. I think it's much easier to have this take if you haven't kind of been there all year and just seen the value that he has to this team. But Kenny Atkinson because of Darius Garland being out, made a couple of different adjustments. I want to talk about those adjustments and just kind of what we learned about Kenny Atkinson in the first round of the playoffs and maybe how that could foreshadow some things to come this postseason, because we haven't really talked about that much here on the show. So we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of all that cash. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. So you can stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, because I all know we've got them, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for those long-term goals that I know you have. Plus, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA NBA for half off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. At Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, they'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hard-working minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. And Spencer, I mentioned the lineups with 3 wings, and that was, I kind of think it came out of necessity. Like, the group that I point to is the Mitchell, Mobley, Strus, Hunter, Wade group. They played together in 2 games, games 3 and game 4. Did not play in games 1 and games 2. So I think that can be considered, in my opinion, maybe an unintended consequence of not having Darius Garland is that lineup, because it afforded more minutes to players on the wing that typically go to players in the backcourt. That lineup played 5 minutes together, very, very small sample size, but had a defensive rating of 66, which is really, 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 really good. Surprising to nobody. Net rating was 23. So the offense wasn't great in that group. I think it's fair to expect, okay, they probably hit like 2 shots and that brought them down because they just didn't shoot the ball well for a 5-minute stretch across 2 games. But I do wonder what he learned from maybe having to do some things out of necessity that we can take with us to a series against Indiana in the second round. Like, that is what fascinates me about all this, more so than the Cavs are better without Darius Garland. This is the interesting stuff to me.
Yeah, I mean, the chess match between coaches in the playoffs is always one of the more fascinating elements of these things, because we know in the regular season it's an 82 game grind. You don't really have time to like insert things. It's kind of like, we play our brand of basketball. How can we best do that against that opponent each night, and kind of just go about our business and try to win as many games as we can, which is why winning 64 games doing that is pretty remarkable, all things considered. But once you get to the playoffs, we know it's amped up. It's turned up a notch. You got to sort of come with some things up your sleeve and some things in the back of your mind that you want to try that maybe you haven't yet this season. It's part of the reason why JB Bickerstaff was fired after last year, because 2 straight playoff appearances. And I get it. Like, last year's roster was pretty much the same. And clearly Kenny got a lot more out of it, but both the year before that, he didn't have a lot of tools to kind of go to or turn to in the playoffs. So, it is what it is, but his inability to, I think, make adjustments in that time of year is part of why he was fired. And Kenny has this great basketball mind. Like, I liked the fact that in that Heat series, he was able to basically go small, like you alluded to, so much and use that to their advantage. And it was something that the Heat just could not match. And he realized pretty quickly in that series, like, this is a lineup we can use against this team, but it might not be a lineup that you can use against Indiana. And it's probably not a lineup that you can use necessarily against Boston, depending on what they sort of throw at you. And they're so deep as well. But yeah, like we've talked so much leading into the playoffs, like, can Kenny go 10 deep throughout the entire playoffs like he did all seaon? First round, he was able to because they were winning by so much. This next round, it might get shortened a little bit.
In the first round, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But like this next round, he might not be able to do that. But the players that he throws out there with coming off the bench, whether it's Hunter, whether it's Wade, I'm sure we'll see Okoro in some spurts because he's so good defensively, and you might just need him out there to lock somebody up for a few minutes. Like, I'm fascinated, like you, to see how else he uses these wing players. And that's why the addition of DeAndre has been so massive, because previously, like, your best wing player, or theoretically your best wing player, was supposed to be Dean Wade. And it was like there was way too much on what you're like 8th, 9th best player on the roster, all things considered. Now, like, he's freed up because DeAndre's so good and he can defend fairly well. He's not a great defender, but he's a good defender, and he's such a good scorer that, like, that takes some pressure off of Wade, where he can just come out and play his game. We know he's really good on the defensive end, and when he's making shots, like, he can get hot. So I love the fact that you can mix and match and try some different things, and we got to see, I think, the first iteration of that from Kenny, where he threw that out there, not having Darius for the first time, and it was nice to see. Again, small sample size, but I'm guessing we'll see more lineups like that here in the second round against an Indiana team that similarly plays a very fast pace and is going to want to try to get a lot of shots up in this series.
Right, and there are things that I'm very interested in this series, and I think it's fair to say that the Cavs played one close game against Miami, right? Like, they won game 2 by 9 points, and that was a game that got as close to 2 down the stretch. And the closing lineup in that game for the Cavs was their normal starting lineup. They had Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland out there. The thing that I almost wish, and I'm not going to say, oh man, the Cavs really should have been more tested in the first round. Like, that's not going to matter. But the thing that I wish we had more information on is, what is Kenny Atkinson going to be like at the end of close games in the playoffs? Like, how flexible is he going to be? And I don't think that closing lineup was a mistake in that game 2. But we have seen him at times, and to be fair, DeAndre Hunter, I thought, had a bad game 2. He had a bad game 1. He was better in game 2. He wasn't great. I think he was 4 of 10. But what we don't know is how willing is he to deviate from the normal closing groups at the end of games. And I think that's going to be an interesting question in this series. How comfortable is he going to be potentially closing a game with Jarrett Allen on the bench and the Cavs playing something like Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter, or Dean Wade and DeAndre Hunter and Evan Mobley as a front court, plus the combination of, if Darius is healthy, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, or if Darius is not healthy, maybe Max Strus is out there with Donovan Mitchell. Like, how flexible is he going to be with these closing groups in games that really matter? Because we did at times this season see him with Jared Allen on the bench in the final minutes of games. Like, that is a thing he was comfortable doing in the regular season, but is that going to carry over to the postseason? That is something I'm fascinated to learn. And I do think we get that answer in this round.
I love that you're bringing this up. And listen, you're right. Like, we saw it a ton during the regular season. There were some games down the stretch of the regular season where he was totally comfortable leaving Jared Allen out of that closing lineup because just matchups didn't call for it. It wasn't a good fit. I think on that West Coast trip especially, there was a lot of games where they were closing it out without Jared on the floor. And in classic Jared Allen fashion, like, he accepts whatever role he's given. Like, he never complains about that. And so, he's going to be cool with it. If that's just what's best for the team. I would like to think that like a tiger doesn't change his stripes, right? That he's not going to like shy away from doing those things postseason time when there's more pressure and it's all eyes on you and all that. I think he's going to stay the same, and he sort of gives me the vibes that that's the case because he's been pretty candid with us, I think, all season long. So I'm picturing that happening. I think back to, oh God, I'm going to kick myself for this. There was a series early in this, or a game early in the season, like during the 15-game win streak, where they almost lost. And he had like, I can't remember off the top of my head what the lineup was, but he had like a real fluky lineup out there to close the game out. It might have been like Dean Wade. I think Donovan was part of it. I think Mobley. And then I can't remember who else was there. Like, it was a weird lineup that was just like, and he said after the game that he was just kind of spitballing. Like, nothing was working previously. Everyone was kind of cold that night. And so he just threw something out there and it started working. So he stuck with it till the end of the game. And I thought that was an insightful, again, we were just a couple weeks into the Kenny Atkinson experience at that point, but I thought it was an insightful sort of look behind the mind that is Kenny Atkinson and how he thinks through these things. And that's stayed with me throughout the season. The lineup hasn't stayed with me that he had, but that sort of philosophy he has stayed with me throughout the season. Cause I keep thinking back to that when I think about the chess match that is the postseason. Like, are you willing to do those things in these moments on this stage? And like, when games are on the line and this is where like legacies are defined And because I saw that so early in the season, I'm willing to bank on him doing it. But you're right. We haven't seen him get tested enough yet to see what he does. And I do think there'll be some more opportunities to do that in this upcoming series.
I think there will be. I've given a prediction, so I'm going to make Spencer give a prediction,
Okay.
and I'll give a key to the series. We'll do that next right here on Locked on Cavs. So, Spencer, I'm going to make the bold prediction here that you are going to pick the Cavs to win this series. I know, going out on a limb, I know picking a 64-win team to win in the second round is real crazy stuff. How long do you think this series goes?
So I am gonna say I think it's gonna go 6. I've been leaning 5, but I feel like Indiana's I think they've got some momentum coming from this series against the Bucks. And I do think like they do present some interesting challenges for the Cavs in terms of like length, wings that they have. Obviously Turner I think is a great player, and it's going to be up to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to kind of handle him inside and see what they can do with that. You know, you talk about this team sort of still trying to prove themselves from a physical standpoint this time of year. Miles Turner is somebody who's going to test you in that way. So I'm curious to see like how they come out against him. So I think I could see Indiana winning a couple games here, but I still think the Cavs, I don't ever think it's going to be like a stressful 6 games where you feel like it could go either way. I think the Cavs will win their games the way they have been. And I think Indiana will just take a couple. And also I'm saying 6 because selfishly that means I get to at least go to Indy for one game. Because as we talked about pre-show, I'm not going to be able to make it for the first 2. So I think it'd be fun to at least get a trip in. So I'll say Cavs in 6, and I'm there for the clincher in game 6.
Yeah, Indy is a great city. My key to this series is how many times can I eat at Harry and Izzy's in downtown Indianapolis? No, I'm very interested in. I went Cavs in 5, and I talked about this on yesterday's show, but I went Cavs in 5. I'm very interested because the Pacers, what they did during the regular season was they were a relatively good team at limiting opponent 3-point shooting attempts. Teams took 38 threes per game in the regular season against the Pacers. In the postseason, teams also, in the first series against the Bucks took 38 threes per game against the Pacers. Now, those numbers are the same, but they're not created equal because what changes from the regular season to the postseason? The pace slows down. Now, the Pacers still play quicker, a faster tempo. Yeah. I think they played the second quickest series behind only Memphis and Oklahoma City. So 38 threes allowed is more than the 38 threes that they allowed in the regular season because the possessions went down. The Cavs took in the first round, and there, as we record this, there are still series going on. So maybe this could change, although I don't think it will. The Cavs took 43.8 3-pointers per game against the Miami Heat. I don't expect it to be that high, but if the Cavs are shooting 43s per game, given how talented they are at shooting the basketball from beyond the arc, I struggle to see recipes where the Pacers can win. And the other key to this series to me is going to be make Tyrese Haliburton be a scorer. So he has a tremendous ability to get others involved. He's done a great job as a passer. He's one of the best assist to turnover guys in the entire NBA. Like, he's just awesome at that. This season, he has had a very good year, averages 9.2 assists per game. In the regular season, he had 33 games, where he had double-digit assists. He had 40 games where he had less than 10 assists. Mm-hmm. The Pacers were 20-20 when he had 9 assists or fewer. So if the Cavs can keep him below 10 assists, they're going to not have problems. Yeah. If they make Tyrese Haliburton score, if he has to be a guy that scores 30 points per game, and he can go get 30, but if he has to go get 30, I think it means a lot less from everybody else. And I think you feel really good about the Cavs if that's the case.
Yeah, I like that thought process on that in terms of like, you know, inside basketball, if you will, in terms of like what is the philosophy to attack Tyrese Haliburton. And I think the discourse around him going into this series has been interesting because there's this mystery poll out there that apparently NBA players said he was the most overrated player. I know Donovan got asked about that on Thursday and basically tried to dodge the question because he was like, "I'm not giving him anything to."
He said that wasn't me.
Material.
I didn't vote.
Yeah,
well, Kenny Atkinson was
that.
asked about that too, and he goes, "Well, I know they didn't ask me because he's not overrated to this coach."
I'm curious though, from your perspective, like. Is it Haliburton or is it Pascal Siakam who you think makes the Pacers tick more? Like, who do you think is going to be more vital to this team winning, Haliburton or Siakam when it's all said and done?
I think it's Siakam, I think it's Haliburton.
Okay.
Because I just think that they can't survive without him doing the things that he does. Pascal Siakam's a really good player, and he can go win them a game or two in this series, but they're just not a good team without Tyrese Haliburton. Like, they need him to do so much in terms of setting the table for everybody, in terms of playing at the pace that they want to be at. I think that they are a very average to maybe below average team without Tyrese Haliburton. And I just think that he is if the Cavs slow him down, the Pacers have no chance. Like, Pascal Siakam can still have great games, but without Tyrese Haliburton doing Tyrese Haliburton things, the Pacers, I just don't see having a chance in this series.
Yeah, and that's why I think the defensive end is going to be vital. And for what it's worth, I mean, again, there's some context here, there's some nuance here in that you're playing the Heat. 2 of the games they basically quit. It felt like, so it's not like there was this team that was like really extra motivated to destroy you in those 2 games. But defensively, I think it's a promising sign that Cleveland has looked more like the Cleveland defensive team that we saw early in the season. I know from like January on, they were more of like a middle of the road defensive team. Some of that is just the lull of, an 82 game season. We know March is a tough month every year for good teams. But I think there were some promising signs that they were getting back to that. And so, yeah, like I think their ability to slow down that pace and like you said, take the ball, really keep the ball in Haliburton's hands and make him have to make offensive decisions rather than like passing out of it and giving other guys opportunities could be what dictates this game. But definitely 2 fast-paced teams, and we'll see when they collide here what that kind of looks like in the slower-paced, more physical style of basketball that is the NBA playoffs.
It'll be fascinating to watch. Game 1 is on Sunday. As we record this, we don't know what time Game 1 will be. As you listen to this, you probably do know what Game 1 will be. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. And Spencer, thank you for jumping on. Where can everyone find your stuff over at Locked On Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, so Locked On Browns until we get word that it's changing to Locked On Shedeur Sanders. I want to make sure you find the right channel. So Locked On Browns for now. It could change in the coming months. We'll see. Also, obviously on X there at Spencito_, and you can catch me Saturdays on 92 The Fan as well locally, where Danny and I are coworkers. So appreciate you guys.
Oh yeah, we are. Yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, be a friend, tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything from Locked On Cavs. Game 1 is tomorrow. I will be back right after it talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers.